There are some football feelings you can only get with BetMGM Sportsbook. That's right. Not just the highs, woo! The O's, or the no-nos. No! It's the feeling that comes with being taken care of every down of the football season. The feeling that comes with getting MGM Rewards benefits or earning bonus bets. So, whether you're drawing up a same-game parlay in your playbook or betting the over on your favorite team, the BetMGM app is the best place to bet on football. You only get that feeling at BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas, now live across the DMV. BetMGM and GameSense remind you to play responsibly. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only, DC only, subject to eligibility requirements. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
At Ashley, you'll find colorful furniture that brings your home to life. Ashley makes it easier than ever to express your personal style with an array of looks in fun trending hues to choose from earth tones to vibrant colors to calming blues and greens. Ashley has pieces for every room in the house in the season's most sought-after shades. A more colorful life starts at Ashley. Shop in store or online today. Ashley, for the love of home.
Welcome to Education in Focus. I'm your host, Eliana Kernodle. As the school year approaches across the country, homeschooling continues to grow, and parents cite a variety of reasons for their decision. Joining me to dig into this is Chalkboard News editor Brendan Clary. Brendan, what do we know about the numbers on this?
Yeah, so as far as we know, as far as we can tell, the number of students who are being educated at home, the number of homeschooling students, is up slightly in 2022, 2023. That's when we most likely have recent data, right? So then that's a little bit higher than the 2021, 2022 school year, according to estimates from, experts who are really digging into this. That is Brian Ray, who's president of the National Home Education Research Institute. So our journalist here at Chalkboard News, Austin Gergens, he reached out to Ray and basically asked him, what do we know about the number of students? And he said it's slightly up. So it's not quite finalized, but he said it might have barely moved up to 3.2 million students. So that is an increase. And if you're looking at all the students in the nation, this is a quite small percentage. I think it's 5 or 6% of all students are choosing homeschooling as an option. But that there is that slight increase is very interesting.
And the National Center for Education Statistics conducted a survey of parents. What did they find about parents' reasons for choosing homeschooling?
Yeah, that's a great question. Basically, they found, and Ray talked about this too, is that there's not just like one reason. There's a lot of different reasons why parents would choose to homeschool. And I think that there's, you can select multiple. It's like sort of multiple choice, right? It's not like here's the only reason that you should, keep your kids at home and teach them at home. But there's, they responded, and this is from 2019. And the sort of issue with this data is that it's a massive lift. So they only do it every few years, right? And like these are these people's full-time job at the National Center for Education Statistics. Like they're going out there and they're asking these questions and they're trying to get this data. But I mean, we're talking lots of like huge sample sizes and just like a lot of different kinds of surveys. So it's a big lift, but essentially they found that 80% of parents said that they're concerned about school environment, such as safety, drugs, or negative peer pressure. So, I mean, that includes a lot of different kinds of things, but I've heard this as a reason too. There are some concerns, I think, about different kinds of like physical safety. There has been a rise in school shootings. And if parents are worried about that, you can keep your kids at home and they're not leaving your your house. Another thing is to be able to provide moral instruction. Emphasis on family life together, 74%. So it's about 75% for moral instruction, 75% for family life together. And then actually dissatisfaction with academic instruction at other schools. That's 73% or so of respondents. And then religious instruction, almost 2/3 of parents said that they would want to do that. And then kind of the last big one, 54% of parents said a desire to provide a non-traditional approach to a child's education. So maybe taking them on field trips in the middle of the school day where it's like less busy, and going to a museum when all the other kids are in school. So, and then, there's some other reasons that kind of lumped in. Then there's some sickness or physical health, some of those other issues parents would cite as well.
And there's some interesting kind of geographic and demographic trends in homeschooling over the years. What are those, and how did the COVID pandemic impact those?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something that Ray got into with our journalist here at Chalkboard News, that, essentially he said that the COVID-19 pandemic, that basically sent a lot of schools online, right? And so I think that was a big part of that sort of data citing there that African American Black students were at home and were homeschooling during the pandemic. And I think that if you look at sort of maybe some of that and you sort of parse out, you might see like, okay, well, who was able to stay home with kids? Like if you had a white collar job, right? And so I think you can look at some of these different kinds of questions about that demographic stuff. And we don't get into that here, but I think that kind of raises those sorts of questions just looking at the data. But basically there's this trend of like, there's a lot more Black students who are being homeschooled. But he was saying that before that, there were these students, and that there's been quite a bit of growth over the last 10 years. This is what Ray was saying about that. Black and Hispanic families, homeschooling more frequently in the 10 years leading up to COVID even. But I think you'd see that big spike, in terms of the data because of, schools being closed at home. And there's a lot of different studies out there that show that students who are negatively affected before COVID, Black, Indigenous, people of color, you had these communities who were being, sent home at higher rates than white children during COVID, right? And like the disparate, impact of COVID has affected them more greatly in terms of test scores. And we've seen that in almost every single thing that I've written about test scores, is that students who were having a hard time before the pandemic, it just had so much of a harder time. So I think that kind of plays along with that. But then kind of getting into where in that, homeschooling was a little bit higher in the South and Southeast, in the West portions of the U.S., and then a little bit lower in the Midwest and New England. And that was what Ray told our journalist there. And New England also defied its pre-pandemic rates. That was another kind of interesting find. It seemed to grow the fastest in the New England area and shot up a lot during the school lockdown. So I think, again, you might have, you look into some of this data from a few years ago, and you're starting to think about, okay, where were the lockdowns the greatest? And so if you're looking at some of that older trends, and they're finally catching up to that, if New York shuts down everything because of COVID, and that was like a high lockdown state, then it makes sense. Like a lot of kids are reporting that they're being at home. So I think that's an interesting sort of thing that kind of goes along with the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's sometimes I feel like that's ancient history, but in terms of data collection, it's really not. And so it's just kind of an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, and he also mentioned that laws played into this somewhat too, of New England historically has much stricter laws about how you can homeschool, what requirements you have to fulfill to do that. So that kind of accounts for some of that difference, at least in that historically. What did Ray have to say about the future of homeschooling, like based off of his knowledge and the data? What does he think it may look like going forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. And he said that he's thinking it's going to continue to grow, but not as fast as in the last 10 years. So that was, kind of the one, the takeaway from that in terms of the future. And, he said that what might drive that is that if you have a student who was homeschooled, and as they get older, they're going to be more likely to homeschool themselves. Like maybe they had a positive experience. So he said, based on his research, that's what he's seeing, is that people who were homeschooled growing up are more likely to homeschool when they grow up. And, I think that there's maybe a lot of different reasons. It could be, your that you did have a good experience and you want to continue with that. It could be cultural, a family who's more likely to homeschool would then be able to say I'm going to kind of stay in line with that and homeschool my kids. And also they have a lot of kids. That's something that he's seen from his research too, that homeschool families on average have a little more children than maybe another family who's not homeschooling, right? So again, maybe it's that cultural sort of thing of bigger families more likely to homeschool and get that flexibility.
Well, Brendan, thank you for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at chalkboardnews.com.
There are some football feelings you can only get with BetMGM Sportsbook. That's right. Not just the highs, the O's, or the no-no-nos. It's the feeling that comes with being taken care of every down of the football season. The feeling that comes with getting MGM Rewards benefits or earning bonus bets. So, whether you're drawing up a same-game parlay in your playbook or betting the over on your favorite team, the BetMGM app is the best place to bet on football. You only get that feeling at BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas, now live across the DMV. BetMGM and GameSense remind you to play responsibly. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only, DC only, subject to eligibility requirements. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
At Ashley, you'll find colorful furniture that brings your home to life. Ashley makes it easier than ever to express your personal style with an array of looks in fun trending hues to choose from earth tones to vibrant colors to calming blues and greens. Ashley has pieces for every room in the house in the season's most sought-after shades. A more colorful life starts at Ashley. Shop in-store or online today. Ashley, for the love of home.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But D.C. politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.